Okay, I just want to be clear. We are live. This is live on social media.
Live,
so just make sure nothing's happening. I know that certain Hall of Fame tight ends that use a microphone do need to be aware of when a live stream is occurring. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody's fully aware.
It was such heavy breathing. It was
poor Shannon Sharpe, man. Yeah. No, a lot of people are really digging on the cardio element of the whole thing.
My favorite, I think my favorite reaction so far has been a tweet that was like Paul Pierce finding out that ESPN's not going to discipline Shannon Sharpe for going live, and him like melting into the couch, like whatever. What a wild, perfect internet story. If you don't know what we're talking about, honestly, good for you.
Just go. If I know this is gonna be cryptic,
spend less time. You spend a lot less time on the internet, and that's a good thing. That's probably a good.
It's a very good thing. Yeah. But obviously, we had a delayed show. It stinks at the timing, but I was out on a work trip and was unable to record our first recap of the season. But nonetheless, we're going to bring you the week 1 recap here. We're going to do a little bit at the end as well. Looking ahead to week 2, we're going to preview Thursday Night Football coming up here in just a couple hours. We're also going to preview a few teams that we think, obviously a must win is pretty strong for this time of year, but teams that really could benefit from getting a win this week, teams that really need to, right the course or maybe keep on the same track from week 1. So let's get into it. We're going to get all of our matchups in here on our week 1 recap and our week 2 preview. All right, it was only 1 week, but there were plenty of highs and lows from week 1 to begin the NFL season. And we started off with a great game, the Ravens and the Chiefs, Thursday Night Football last week. Well, I guess it technically wasn't Thursday Night Football, the product. It was an NBC production. But nonetheless, the Chiefs get the win 27-20 over the Ravens, which, it was a little bit sloppy, especially early on. I mean, man, the amount of procedural calls and offsides by the lineman calls on the Ravens
the rest of the week. The rest of the weekend, I never saw that called again.
But honestly, it did make a lot of sense. I think what the refs were doing, I think that the whole thing was their whole game plan was to make an example of the first game of the season to forecast for the weekend and say, look, this is how this is going down. And then ease up on the weekend and hope that everybody falls in line. That is my guess.
Trent Williams on Monday Night Football was like in the backfield. I was like, throw the flag, throw the flag. All right, I'm with you. I'm with you.
No,
it was a wild start.
It was very strange, very interesting. Lamar Jackson threw 41 passes in this game. No interceptions, though, to his credit. 122 yards on the ground for him. Derrick Henry, the utilization was a little bit off. Obviously, they weren't able to control the pacing as much as they would have liked to, but only 46 yards on the ground for him. Isaiah Likely, it was probably his biggest game of the season already in week 1 that he'll have the whole year. Your overall thoughts here is kind of the Chiefs took care of business. It was very much a Chiefs-like from last year, efficient playing. Xavier Worthy, coming up big in his first game action. A lot of different stuff happening in this game, really, between the two teams and some unlikely heroes.
My biggest thought is if I feel bad for the people who drafted Mark Andrews in fantasy, because it definitely feels like the Ravens know what they have in the sense it's like, hey, we have a 2 tight end system here now, and we have the explosive guy. And it looks like Mark Andrews, especially with age and size, is now becoming like the reliable third down guy and maybe red zone targets. But Isaiah Likely is explosive. And I loved watching Lamar Jackson put the Superman cape on. I think the biggest concern is obviously like he missed practice, I think, on Wednesday, and then I think was even limited today. He took a ton of hits. I don't expect him to take a ton more hits the rest of the season. I think he just really wanted to win that game. And I think he got away from the game plan of maybe being successful as far as what they wanted to do, running the ball or other things, and just tried to Superman it. And he almost won him the damn game. I mean, with Isaiah Likely's toe at the back of the end zone. As far as the Chiefs go, I mean, ho-hum Chiefs. And they're 2-time Super Bowl champions, and now they're starting off this year with a win as opposed to a loss at home. And so you got to be positive if you're a Chiefs fan. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you love to see the utilization of Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. The reports are now I'm hearing from guys like Pro Football Talk is Rashee Rice is probably going to end up actually playing the whole year with the way his court date's set and everything. The NFL is not going to get involved until the court system goes through everything. And so his suspension will come next year. And so already Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice look mid-season form together. And that's a scary thing for the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, and they're going to get Hollywood Brown back into the fold, sooner rather than later. So whether it's this upcoming week or the following, they're going to get reinforcements there in the receiving core coming up soon. No panic button on either the Ravens or the Chiefs, though. That much is for sure. Let's get to the Friday game, the first game in Brazil, in Sao Paulo there. The Eagles get a 34-29 victory over the Green Bay Packers. And, of course, the biggest storyline to come out of this game was the injury to Jordan Love and MCL. He's going to be out a few weeks, but they're not ruling him out for this upcoming week, but it's almost certain that he's going to miss between 3 and 6 is kind of what's being forecasted right now. Not a terrible game from Jordan Love by any means in this one. And, the Packers offense looked, fine. Jaden Reed, back to, finishing kind of what he started at the end of last year. And, but the Eagles offense was really looking good, which I think they absolutely needed a performance like that to start off on the right foot because we saw that catastrophic collapse last season.
You said first game in Brazil. I hope it's the last game in Brazil. I don't need the NFL to go back to Brazil.
Field didn't look very good, huh?
It's the one game of the first weekend that I can honestly say I don't really know what the Eagles and what the Packers are like. You know what I mean? You get a sense of what every team is like, but the field was so bad. The atmosphere was so weird. It's such unique playing conditions. Friday night, prime time. I'm just not gonna I don't feel concrete evidence about anything. I do feel concrete that it's got to be good for Packers fans that they didn't put Jordan Love in IR, right? You know what I mean?
That much is good for sure.
It can't be bad. I have the sense that if it was like he got injured in the first round of the playoffs and this was like a wild card win, that if they had moved on, he'd be playing this week, right? They might be resting all week, a ton of physical therapy, a ton of treatment, but he'd be playing this week. So that's a good sign. I think they'll rest him as long as Malik Willis looks competent. I think if the Packers lose, but Malik Willis looks competent this week, they might rest Jordan Love again and risk going 0-3. But looks really inept and it's bad, then I think you'll probably see Jordan Love play next week, depending on what Jordan Love's knee feels like. I think the biggest takeaway for me, Dan, from the Eagles was, huge breath of relief, right? You get to kind of put the stench of the end of the last season away just for a week, right? Obviously, you have a big primetime game coming up for week 2. But all systems looked go for the Eagles offense. The tush push, not so much anymore. That's going to be a fun storyline to keep an eye out for this year. Was it the turf?
That didn't work out too well.
It's a Jason Kelce. So positives for both teams. Obviously, the Packers now have to try to survive the Jordan Love injury. It'd be easier to survive the Jordan Love injury if they had won that game. Obviously, starting 0-1 and now staring down the barrel of maybe 0-2, 0-3 because of the Jordan Love injury is going to be tough for them.
Yeah. So hopefully they can get him back sooner rather than later as well, because I mean, I'm just not from my preview predictions, obviously I have them winning a lot of games this year, but at the same time, I do have concerns about the Green Bay Packers. And so obviously without Jordan Love, I mean, Malik Willis looked lost coming back in there. So yeah, they're going to hope that he's not the guy that they have to rely on for too long here into the future.
Yeah.
The Steelers get a very Steeler win against the Atlanta Falcons in Arthur Smith's homecoming there in Atlanta, 18-10. Of course, Russell Wilson didn't start this game as he continues to battle this calf injury that was nagging him early in camp and kept him out. And so Justin Fields gets the start here, and Chris Boswell bangs 3 50-plus yard field goals in this one, 6 total field goals to give the Steelers the victory. And Kirk Cousins, our first glimpse of him in an Atlanta Falcons uniform, a very odd start to his tenure with the Falcons. A lot has been said about his new stance and how his footwork is much different. And it appears that they're really trying to have him do things differently to take care of that Achilles. That's no way you want to start a campaign when you're being that cautious with the quarterback. So we'll see if brighter days are ahead for Kirk Cousins and company. But really, I thought the storyline of this was that TJ Watt's, revenge tour of sorts,
He's
not
so
getting the
good.
DPOY last year. He had 2 sacks, one of them
They were
being a
taken
strip
away.
sack that he recovered, taken away. He could have had a 3 sack outing with 2
And the
fumbles,
refs in the
forced
NFL,
fumbles,
I
2
think,
fumble recoveries.
apologized for that, right, Dan? Like they admitted at the end after the review, like we screwed this up. These were strip sacks and a sack.
I know that TJ said that the refs came up to
Some
him and said, "We blew
apologized or
that,"
something.
because
Yeah.
one of them was he timed it so perfectly. They called him offsides, but he had timed it just so well that it looked like it was almost offsides. Another was holding that was definitely holding on the defense. It was totally
Okay.
useless and stupid to do. But they took away sack from Watt because of that too. But yeah, nonetheless, Justin Fields looked fine. He kind of did what you'd expect him to do, and ran the ball well, didn't turn the ball over, which was key. Did fumble the first snap of the game, which wasn't great.
Classic
But he
Justin
but he
Fields.
covered it. Yeah, that was rough. But no, overall, I mean, I think this is going to be the gritty way that the Steelers win football games. You want to see more points, no touchdowns from them in this game. But that defense is something to be, lauded. And I think they're going to be a top 3 unit for the entire season.
It's so funny. Leave it to our 2 teams to be the 2 teams that get a W that you're like, I'm not apologizing. I'm not apologizing. A win's a
Yeah,
win.
exactly. Yeah. And get it done with their defense. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just, it's historically, I said it during the Bears game, we'll talk about it in a second. I'm sure you felt it during the Steelers game. It's like, yeah, I've seen this game before. Like I've seen this game a million times before. Defense just taking over and the offense struggling. I'll say this about the Steelers. What a fantastic defensive game plan. What a front 7 they have. TJ Watt,
Yeah.
he's to me right now, especially after week 1, like that dominating performance. You could have made the argument before the season. He's the second best player in football behind Patrick Mahomes right now, right? Like, I mean, he's maybe been, a top 5, definitely top 5 player in football when healthy over the last 3-4 years. I mean, electric play from him. I love that Justin Fields got the start. I love that Justin Fields is getting the start week 2. I'm excited for that, especially because we don't have to deal with the whole Russell Wilson revenge tour against Denver BS line. It's just get to watch a football game without like that hanging over our heads. I will say this about Atlanta, Dan, that was concerning. And Atlanta, Kirk Cousins, they definitely seemed as though they were trying to protect him. And then it's just like, this is so dumb. Why is he playing if you have to protect him? You should not be doing that. It didn't look right. It didn't look good. And, I'll say Atlanta's kind of the microcosm for week 1 as a whole. There was only 2 quarterbacks that threw over 300 yards in week 1. And I think another only like 2 or 3 that threw over 250 yards. We are now officially seeing the lack of preseason actually impacting starters in the NFL and offenses. Defenses right now are ahead of schedule.
That's true. Yeah. We're starting to kind of revert back, right?
It feels like defenses are ahead of schedule because they're fresh right now. You got to remember at the beginning of the year, defenses no one's hurt for the most part, right? Your defenses are fresh. Everyone's ready to go. Historically, throughout an NFL season, the stats prove it's true. Defensive guys get hurt more than offensive guys. So by Thanksgiving and the end of the year, the offenses has a huge advantage because you're going up against a lot of second stringers and third stringers. Defenses are hanging on by a thread, and then the weather's a factor to where they can't get off the ball as easily. You're dealing with it, the whole I know where I'm going versus you have to react where I'm going, and then offenses hit a groove, right? So I think I expect offenses to be better in week 2, but. And Atlanta was one of those really disappointing, like offensive, like inept teams that we were all expecting to have an explosion week 1, and it just was a dud. And Kirk Cousins, a lot of pressure on him, and he's got a Monday night game.
Yeah. Now, I was excited to see what Joey Porter Jr. was able to do against Drake London. He completely shut him down and took him out of the game, but yeah, if you're the Falcons, you got to be able to utilize these guys. I mean, Bijan looked great. They relied on him early, and he was having that opening drive. He was dominant. But yeah, they need to find a way. I mean, good to see Kyle Pitts get in the end zone, but they're going to have to figure out the Kirk Cousins thing sooner rather than later. We got the Bills at the Cardinals. This game was a kind of a nail biter. I mean, when the Cardinals went up 17-3, I believe it was at one point in this game. But you still, because it's the Bills, you knew that, yeah, we got to stay tuned. Like, this is still going to be down to the wire. And the Cardinals just kind of, pulled back a little bit. And it seemed like they weren't, they didn't feed Marvin Harrison Jr. They weren't trying to
He
pepper,
had like one
targets
target
his
or
way.
something?
And
Yeah.
yeah. 9 targets for Trey McBride. So he's obviously still heavily involved. But yeah, that was kind of perplexing to see the Cardinals game plan as they had that lead, playing a little conservative, and Josh Allen just playing hero ball and being great at it. A lot of times when you play hero ball, you can get a Carson Wentz type of situation. But in this circumstance, Josh Allen always seems to come through in these clutch moments for his team. So yeah, big, because you go down 0-1 to the Arizona Cardinals to start the year. That's not great for Bills.
And in Buffalo, I will say this:
the
Josh Allen storyline is playing out exactly as I predicted in the offseason. The storyline's great right now. 4 touchdowns already total in 1 week, 2 rushing, 2 passing. He's playing hero ball because he doesn't have as much to work with. Can't wait to watch him play tonight. I think he's gonna have a great game. He torches Miami. I think he's like
he owns them.
He's like 7-1 or something. I mean, it's crazy. He's like
6-1
against Miami. And averages over 250 yards and a touch and 2 touchdowns. He's great.
I guess it's 6-1 against Tua, but he's probably even better.
Against Miami as a whole.
Yeah. So
I will say this quickly about Buffalo before I say something about Arizona. Loved seeing Buffalo be able to say, "Oh crap, we're down, and we're just going to claw our way back." And whether it's Josh doing it all, but early in the year, you face adversity and your team responds really well. I think that's great for a team that's got, expectations to see, right? You'd obviously like to see them just blow people out, but the next best thing you'd like to see is, hey, they faced adversity and they came back and won, because they're going to face adversity, throughout the year. I will also say for Arizona, it reminded me a lot of the Tennessee, Chicago. Tennessee, like Arizona, just felt like a young team that was like, oh my God, I have the ball. You're like, what do I do? I'm winning. And then it just like it kind of fell apart. Also, I'm a little concerned now with Arizona. The quotes coming out yesterday of Kyler Murray saying it's not my job to get Marvin Harrison involved.
Yeah, that was weird.
I think the offensive coordinator came out today and said, was trying to soothe it out, saying, no, Kyler's right. It's my job to scheme things, but that just feels like a weird thing. The whole Marvin Harrison Jr. No jersey thing, the whole lawsuit. And now after a really weird week 1, this just nothing feels right. And there's no one, I think, who needs a big, calming, good game better than Marvin Harrison Jr. in week 2. So we'll see if they can get that. For Arizona, if you're a fan of the Cardinals, I think you leave this game being frustrated because you gave away a game. But you say to yourself, hey, this could be a fun team to watch all year, and I'll sign up for that.
Yeah, a little encouraged just by what they were able to do and the fact that they were in this game till the end. All right, let's get to your Bears. Bears at home. Caleb Williams, of course, making his first NFL start against the Tennessee Titans here. Bears win 24-17 on the backs of their special teams and their defense. What was your takeaway? I mean, I personally, I know a lot of people were saying like, oh, we got to swing back on Caleb Williams, or a lot of people saying, well, we should have never been this high. I still think the hype around him was totally justified. It's his first game.
Oh, yeah.
And he also didn't completely give the game away. And I think that's important too, for with your backs against the wall, your defense is starting to get you points set up. So what did you make of Caleb Williams' performance and the Bears as a whole?
So I'll start with just my initial reaction after the game was pumped that we won, knowing that it was going to calm the waters around the discussion, right? The win soothes, it's the Neosporin on the cut, because it was a cut because we were expecting it to be exciting and it was anything but. So initial excitement, and my initial thought was, hey, the kid didn't make any bad mistakes. And I was so ready, as I think one of the big stats was the last time the Bears won a game without scoring a touchdown and throwing less than that many yards was it was a Rex Grossman game. And in that game, Rex Grossman threw 3 interceptions. And all I've watched the last 3 years with Justin Fields is the defense is keeping us alive, or someone, and then he makes a backbreaking fumble that kills us on offense or something like that, right? So I was really pumped that Caleb took care of the football. I think it can't be understated that he took care of the football. after now having a couple days to listen to people like Colin Cowherd and Greg Cosell and my guy Waddle and Sylvie in Chicago, I think some of the best things I've heard is like, listen, he was inaccurate. And it definitely was, you could tell, jitters because he had really happy feet. If you watch his feet, and I've gone back and looked at some of the highlights, really happy feet. And if you look at his USC highlights, he was always calm and sure-footed in the pocket. So I think a lot of this was nerves, a lot of this expectation. I don't think that's
probably what led to like the overthrows. Like
Yeah.
he could have had 2 massive touchdown plays.
Yes.
Essentially
And Keenan Allen dropped one. Like that's the play I wish I had back because it's like if he catches that, maybe that settles everything, right? And,
True. Yeah.
But Caleb was really good in the fourth quarter. And that fourth quarter, he made the throw to DJ Moore in the big third down, moving
the run and slide at the end.
The run and slide. Like he was good in the fourth quarter. And that is really important to me because it's like, hey, you just had a disastrous start and you didn't let it keep unraveling. You at least stopped the bleeding. Defensively, really impressed by this Bears team. Again, this is a Bears game that I've seen so many times, and they like last year would have lost this game 34-10, and it would have just kept bleeding. This year, they win the game. That is extremely important, and it's extremely important for the growth of this team and helping salvage the start of this season. So overall, I'm not gonna be frustrated. A lot of people are saying, "Are you panicking on Caleb?" No, there's no panic at all. It was one game. Now, if we're at Thanksgiving and it's like he still hasn't thrown for 200 yards and it's still like this shaky, then the panic starts to set in because then it's like, who do I need to blame? Where does the blame go? Then I need to start doing the deep dive on, is it the player? Is it the coaching staff? I will say overall, frustrated not with the play calling necessarily from Shane Waldron, frustrated with the interior of the offensive line. They were not good, and frustrated with the lack of the tight end involvement. So I don't know if that's necessarily play calling, but just like, dude, you have Cole Kmet, who you just paid. He's a giant target. You have Jared Everett. You have Mercedes Lewis. Like, where multiple end sets in the uniqueness of just put the tight end 5 yards, let the kid throw some easy completions. It's what I begged the Bears to do with Justin Fields, like little easy things just to get him in the rhythm. None of that was there. And so that I don't necessarily blame the play calling. I blame the personnel and the decisions in that regard. That'd be the only thing I'd be critical on the coaching staff. And last thing really quickly for the Titans, I think, are going to be okay. I do think this team has got more talent than we necessarily think. I think the one thing that would be concerning if I'm a Titans fan is, again, Will Levis did exactly what Caleb Williams didn't do, which is he gave the game away, right? Like he gave the game away. So that's got to be imperative to be coached out of him really quickly because otherwise the Titans fans could start saying, hey, we this isn't the guy. So he's got to not give the game away.
Yeah. And you got a new head coach and, a lot of newness there. People that maybe aren't necessarily super tied to Will Levis either. So he's going to have to show out this year to instill some confidence moving forward. The biggest surprise of the week, I'm in a survivor pool and 90% of the survivor pool is already done for the year because we all picked the Bengals to beat the Patriots as the lock of the week. And instead, New England goes into Cincinnati and wins 16-10. Are you more impressed by what the Patriots were able to do, or are you more concerned about the Bengals' lack of ability to score and just disjointedness? Yes, T. Higgins was out, but Jamar Chase played, and they had 90% of their guys.
Impressed by the Patriots, to answer your question, because I think again, Christmas, we'll look back and be like, God, that was a weird game. And since he probably wishes they had it back, but look, since he's in a playoff push right now and the Patriots are, just fighting for relevance and trying to figure out if they're going to tank the rest of the year or not. I truly think that's still the trajectory for both these teams. I'm not panicking on the Bengals at all. Joe Burrow gets off to slow starts. They were 0-2. Last year they were, I think they were 0-2 2 years ago too, even when they made the Super Bowl run or something like that. He gets off to slow starts. Yeah. I think the thing I will say though is it is tough because I think most Bengals fans, when you look at the schedule, would say, all right, through 2 games, we're 1-1 at worst, and we're 2-0 at best because they play the Chiefs this week. So if the Cincinnati Bengals lose to the Chiefs, I'm still not going to be panicking because, again, the Bengals have been there. They've done that. What I do think will be then the trend to look out for is, hey, they lost their offensive coordinator. He's now the head coach of that team we were just talking about, the Titans. So is there something schematically that's now gone from the Bengals office as opposed to just rust? And also you saw how great Joe Mixon was with the Texans, and they don't have that element of their game anymore. So no panic yet.
True.
Good for the Patriots. They'll be able to hang their hat on this for a couple of weeks. But it's two teams. The Bengals are. It's going to be really interesting to get 4 games about a film to then really start to be able to say, "Whoa, this is way different than last year," or "Oh no, they were fine. They're just a little rusty to start the year, and they need to get everyone going."
Yeah, and Burrow was 21-29. It's not like the wheels were off or it was just like an atrocious game. It's just some things weren't clicking for them today, and the Patriots probably have a little bit better of a defense despite not having Christian Barmore, despite losing Matthew Judon. Still a little bit better of a defense than maybe we might think, especially with their new head coach and Gerard Mayo there. So
and Dan, you nailed it right there too. I mean, we talked about it with the Kirk Cousins things. These offenses struggled in week 1. Like it was not just Burrow. It's not like everyone threw for 300 yards and Burrow didn't. He was one of the many, many stars. Justin Herbert, under 200 yards. Kirk Cousins, under 200 yards. Dak Prescott, under 200 yards. Many, many, many stars that were just not
average.
Fantastic. Yeah. As far as compiling stats goes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we saw the Colts in action almost beating the Houston Texans, but Houston wins out 29-27. Anthony Richardson with an off-platform throw that was 70 yards in the air. I believe the stat, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was the most air yards on a touchdown pass since like they started recording it in like 2002 or something. So in like that's 20 years, the most air yards. He got 70 air yards under this thing off platform. It was on his back foot as he was getting pressure in his face.
And remember, that's the shoulder he had surgery on. It was his throwing shoulder.
That's right. Yeah.
I think my biggest takeaway is I truly feel now Anthony Richardson is a 6-7 year quarterback. He's gonna be your quarterback. Sign him to a long-term deal either next year or the year after. And then the last 2 years of that deal, he may not be good anymore, but you're going to get probably a 3-year stretch from like next year. And then the 2 years after that, where he might be unstoppable.
Yeah.
Kind of like Cam Newton was for that 3 or 4 year stretch. And then he'll flame out. Injuries will catch up. And I don't think he'll be a starting quarterback in the NFL by 20.
So you think you've seen enough already?
I don't think I can fully predict he's not going to be a starting quarterback by 2030. He may not even be in the league at 2030, but he's going to be really, really, really fun and amazing for a short stretch. I really do. Now, will that mean they won a football games? I don't know, because I think there's a lot right? When you have a quarterback like him or like Justin Fields or Jane Daniels and Lamar Jackson, I put all of them in the same category. We're just like, what are we watching? There are times with all 4 of those guys, and we'll talk about Jaden here coming up, where you're like, what is this? He looks like if you took Lamar Jackson and put him in the Captain America tube and then he exploded up, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's a fascinating thing. In order for them to win in the AFC, you got to get through a lot of quarterbacks. You got to have a really good team. It's going to be tough. But I do think the Colts, if he can stay healthy, he'll have a 3-year stretch where it's like he's the most electrifying watch maybe in football. And you just said it there with the air stats. I also think Jonathan Taylor, they could have used him more, like just lean on him more.
Don't put Anthony Richardson out there so much. Yeah.
I also think the Colts have this now. They haven't won a home opener since 2013. They haven't won an opening game since 2013. They've started 0-1 since 2013.
Jeez.
So I also think it's just one of those weird things now with the Colts. Like I don't want to panic with them. I still think the Colts could absolutely be in battling for a wild card spot. With the Texans, I mean, you add Diggs to Dell and I can't think of his name. The other wide receiver who's really
Nico Collins.
Collins, thank you.
Trio. Really good trio.
And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this this looks now next level. And Stroud was fantastic. He was surgical. He's so easy. There's nothing that looks difficult about CJ Stroud's game at all. And defensively, man, that DeMeco Ryans defense is really starting to come together. Now I know they gave up big plays, but I don't know what defense is going to.
Richardson was 9 of 19.
Like I don't know what defense is not going to give up those big plays to Anthony Richardson. Like I don't think there's a defense that exists in the NFL right now that won't give up a bomb to Anthony Richardson if he throws it that perfectly, with Ricky Pearsall just being like Randy Moss in his prime. So I'm not going to criticize them too hard. Maybe this is me just trying to pump up the Texans, so it pains me less, depending on what happens Sunday night. But overall, really impressed with both teams. I think
Agreed.
Indy had the second best loss of the opening weekend, behind only the Rams.
Fair enough. Now the stat line 9 of 19 for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns just is like, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. Average like 30 yards.
They never had the ball. The Texans dominated time of position with Joe Mixon. It was incredible.
Yeah. No, very, very impressive stuff. And yeah, Mixon getting a lot of run there. The most carries he's ever had going back to high school, apparently. So there you
awesome.
Go. Dolphins edge out the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-17. Are you like pressing the panic button on the Jacksonville Jaguars, or because like Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane, they took over this game and Jacksonville didn't win it. They had the opportunities.
That's the best way to say it. If you look at the entire game, Jacksonville won 3 2/3 quarters, but Miami won and dominated for a third of a quarter, and they won the game. And so on one hand, I'm like, okay, don't panic on Jacksonville. On the other hand, I'm like, this is year 3 with Doug Peterson now. You went to a playoffs in year 1. You went to the playoffs in year 1. Last year, you struggled down the stretch. There was a chance where you could have had the 1 seed. Remember Jacksonville at one point in time last year, and they fumbled down the stretch. And now it's just one of those where it's like, again, with Trevor Lawrence, nothing seems to be easy. On the opposite end of CJ Stroud, where everything looks easy, with Trevor, it looks difficult. Things look labored, and you see the talent and you see the potential, but it's just nothing fits right. It's like everything's, when you build a piece of furniture from IKEA,
like the rhythm is off offensively.
Yeah, and it's like, what? I followed the instructions. Why is it leaning like that? It just feels like that in Jacksonville. So I don't know what else to say in that regard. And for Miami,
I totally agree, because like seeing him, and I'll let you get to Miami in 1 sec, but I just wanted to touch on that point. Like the touchdown throw to Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie, was an unbelievable throw. I've seen it now from like the back end zone footage. He went over like 3 layers of the defense and led him perfectly to that spot. And it's like, Trevor is so incredibly talented.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like something is just missing. It's not quite right. And I can't put my finger on it.
I didn't think the hot seat was that hot for Doug Peterson, but after week 1, I'm like, oh, okay, he's a guy we should now, like, he needs to start being considered in, like, because Trevor got his deal. Like, Trevor's there, right? Like, Trevor, I think actually just the new Jag Stadium is called like Evermore Stadium or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be Trevor.
And he signed like a deal with them to do that. So like he's not going anywhere. I will say for Miami really quickly, I think it's a little fool's gold. I know I don't want to get into our Thursday night preview yet, but
yeah, I mean they only scored 20 points.
I'll just say this about Miami: like without that Tyreek Hill massive play after the bad Jacksonville, like it was a turnover or a 3-and-out. I think it was a turnover. I mean, what were they really? Like nothing felt consistent. Achane's now injured. I don't trust the interior of that offensive line, and so good win for Miami because again, I don't think they deserve to win that game. So when you win a game you don't necessarily deserve to, that's something. But yeah, I'm not all in on Miami, and I'm not all out on Jacksonville, but pressure is on, I think, Jacksonville a little bit.
I didn't take much away from the Saints-Panthers game. I mean, the Saints absolutely destroyed the Panthers 47-10. The only thing was like, I mean, the Panthers are not this bad. They're not going to be this bad the whole season, but it did give me like pause. Like, man, are they going to be a 4-win team this year? Like, is it gonna? They're just going to repeat and be terrible? Like, I don't know, but I guess good for the Saints. They won 47-10, absolutely destroyed a divisional opponent. So
A huge win for New Orleans. There was a lot of people. I know even Barstool Big Cat, like he joked, like his bet of the week was the Panthers and the points. Like thinking, hey, the Panthers spent $355 million this offseason. They spent a ton of money. And look what they had to show for it. It was ugly. It was disappointing. It was inept. I was saying it to my younger brother. We were talking about Bryce Young. I'm like, there's just no spark. There's no spark. There's
and we've had a full season.
And honestly, he looks sad. Like he looks depressed. I mean, there was that moment where Canales went over to him and like got down on one knee next to him. Like it's like the soul of this team is there. It's gone. And I don't know what it's going to take, but it's really like that trade just snatched the soul of this team. And it feels soulless. It's the only way I can describe it. Because they added talent. Like they added enough talent to be competitive, and it wasn't competitive. And New Orleans, credit to them, I think they took an offseason of frustration and Derek Carr finally being healthy. Because remember, even when Derek Carr started the year, he wasn't healthy last year. And they have a lot of distraction out of the building now. I didn't think about this with New Orleans, but like now the Michael Thomas thing is really gone. It's out there. Like he's not there. He's not going to be there. There's a lot of kind of that odd distraction. Derek Carr's now been in New Orleans, living there for a full calendar year plus. Like there's the transition's gone. There's no hype. Remember, New Orleans was everyone's pick to win that division last year because like, oh, they got Derek Carr, free Derek Carr. So I think they seem like a team that was loose and ready to just take all their offseason frustration out. So I think for New Orleans, this is the type of win that could help catapult them to a really strong start. And they need to, because if you look at the middle of New Orleans' schedule, it gets ugly. So getting off to a strong start is going to be imperative for them going forward.
I don't know what, else we were expecting, but the Minnesota Vikings win by 22 against the New York Giants. Sam Darnold looking really good, 19-24, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. Daniel Jones, no touchdowns, 50% completion percentage, 2 interceptions, including a pick six that pretty much sealed the fate for New York. I mean, how much more runway do you give Daniel Jones in this offense?
They're not.
Minnesota's defense isn't that good.
No, they're not. He's going to start. Like they're not going to go to Tommy DeVito and just wave the white flag. They're not going to do it. The Mara's family won't do that. They won't let that happen. Daniel Jones also hadn't played a game of football in almost a calendar year. Remember, he got injured early last year, coming off of signing the big deal. And so I'll let him have a little bit of the rust and you shake it off. But it was obviously ugly. I think the thing that really blew me away, though, is how efficient Darnold was. Like I was expecting Darnold to play good football because I think Kevin O'Connell's great. They have incredible weapons. But I think I was watching the highlights and I'm like, wait a minute, this looks like Geno Smith. Like it really does look like Geno Smith. You're like big, strong. The ball comes out fast. It's not perfectly placed, but it's there, giving his guys a chance to go get it. And I really think Minnesota now, like I'm praying that the Niners come in this week and demolish the Vikings, right? I want to, because now I'm starting in the back of my mind, there's this kind of kernel of like, oh crap. I had 2 guaranteed wins against Minnesota and now they're going to be feisty and like maybe sneaky good. So part of me is hoping that they get bullied this weekend. But honestly, Sam Darnold seems like he might be on a little bit of a revenge tour. And it's a good thing for him because as we've seen with Baker, as we've seen with Geno, one good year could get maybe him a job somewhere to where he might actually have like the job and not just like, oh, you're here for 1 year and we draft a quarterback. Like he might actually get the job for a 2 or 3 year window. And so we'll see. Well, I mean, a wild game. And I will say this with the Giants, I think they need I think they need a reset. I think Dable needs to get out of there. Now, I think Dable can coach. I'd love to see him with Trevor Lawrence. Look what Dable did with Josh Allen.
That would
You know
be
what I mean?
something else.
So,
Yeah.
like, I just think it's like this. Like, I really, truly, at this point in time, I think they all just need to be like this: fire the GM, fire the coach, fire the quarterback. You're going to pick in the top 5 and reset. And maybe, they don't draft a quarterback because I don't know what kind of quarterback's going to be up there, but they need a reset. They have some talent on the defensive line. They have neighbors, but this team already feels, again, soulless like the Panthers. The problem is the Panthers probably have to start Bryce Young again next year. Like, I don't.
Oh yeah.
Unless it stays this ugly, the Panthers are probably committed to Bryce Young for another year. I think the Giants already know now. This is it with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is auditioning for his NFL future the remainder of the year.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. No, I think that's a good way of putting it. J.K. Dobbins coming back with a fury here in Jim Harbaugh's offense there in Los Angeles. The Chargers win 22-10 over rival Vegas. And yeah, it was the J.K. Dobbins show, 135 yards rushing in this one. Super efficient offense for the Chargers.
Bully
and defense was pretty good too. On the flip side, I would say the Raiders offense looked much more anemic than I expected them to be, especially because the Chargers are not this dominant defense, although they are starting to get a little bit better, but they're older. And yeah, I don't know. I was
and Mac
a little
looked
underwhelmed by the whole performance.
Yeah, I thought Bosa and Mac looked and played really good. They played fresh, like it was the beginning of the year, and they weren't beat
like
up and
younger
yet,
selves.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so Chargers got to build on that. I also think I'm so mad at myself for not taking J.K. Dobbins like in the second or third round of my fantasy.
I know. Yeah.
Like in my head, I thought to myself, yeah, no, J.K., but he's going to split carries with Gus, and God, he'll probably be injured by week 3.
Yeah, people don't want to be hurt again.
And if he stays healthy, he might have 1,500, 1,600 yards because Harbaugh is that kind of coach, and that offensive line looks so good. Alt and Slater is dangerous, man. They have their protection. And again, the crazy thing is Herbert, a productive day, a turnover, a really solid day. But I think the thing with Herbert is it's funny. We now have to switch in our minds, you should not expect Herbert to be throwing the ball 50 times. He's not going to do it. And that's a good thing for Justin Herbert long-term, but it's a bad thing for Justin Herbert's fantasy owners.
Firepower.
But because Justin Herbert already got the bag, if I'm Justin Herbert, I'm all in for this. Like, sign me up. Hand the ball off.
Yeah.
Yes, and just start winning games. So I think the Chargers are feisty, and I'm excited to watch Chargers football. And I'm bummed. I'm a little bummed that I kept them out of the playoffs now, because now I'm starting to think like, dang, this is a physical, fun football team that I think is going to be in some games here. Because Justin Herbert's so talented, he can win them games. Like, there will be games where it's like, Justin, just go win us the game.
Yeah.
And as far as the Raiders go, I mean, they're a team that, again, just feels like they just got to get through this year to figure out what their future is like. And if I were teams in need, I wouldn't stop calling about Davante Adams. I would call about Davante Adams every day. If I was the Raiders, you can't touch my defensive line. I want that. That's part of our future with our young head coach. But you can have offensive pieces that aren't the two young tight ends. Everyone else is on the table, because both the two young tight ends looked great and productive. So that's positives for the Raiders for sure.
Geno Smith taking a sip out of the fountain of youth on a fantastic scramble touchdown against the Broncos late in the game, and they end up getting the victory 26-20 over Denver. Bo Nix looking pretty efficient, but I don't think you want your rookie quarterback throwing 42 passes. Not sure exactly what the thought was there. And he was their leading rusher on the day too, which maybe some people would say, oh, that's exciting. Yeah, maybe for Jaden Daniels. Not if you're Bo Nix and Sean Payton's offense here.
Great win for Seattle. I think Seattle is going to be exactly what I thought they'd be this year. Around 8, 7, maybe 9 wins, and be in games. And they're going to win some games that people don't think they should. They have so much firepower. Those two running backs are incredible. I hate to see Kenneth Walker's already banged up. I think he missed
I know.
practice.
That's a bummer.
But those wide receiver core is fantastic, and Geno looks good. I mean, Geno's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he's gonna at this point. If I was Seattle, depending on where you end up drafting, I would extend him. I think he's got one more year already on the deal, but I would just extend that already, thinking about, okay, we might draft someone, but Geno probably should still be our starter next year. Like he could play football. He's a solid quarterback. And then on the end, I'll talk about Denver. You know how hard I've been on Denver all offseason. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen with Denver. Yeah. Sean Payton's going to try to prove he's smarter than everyone. And Bo Nix threw 2 interceptions. The one in the red zone in the first half was one of the ugliest interceptions I've seen in the pro football in a long time. And the one in the second half was bad. It was bad in the sense of like, okay, rookie mistake. But again, he is a rookie. Horrible game planning for him to have to throw that much. And overall, Denver to me truly feels like a team that is going to underwhelm. And Bo Nix, he might come for the Peyton Manning rookie interception record because they're not going to take him out. He's going to play if he's healthy because Sean Payton's going to try to prove his point. Yeah. He's going to throw the ball, as we've now seen. And so I'll say this. I almost feel a little bit for Bo Nix because he didn't ask for this. He's gotten thrust into this position with a cocky head coach. And if I were him, I'd be like, dude, why am I throwing the ball 42 times? Like, what are we doing here? Like,
they're going to need to figure out how to run the football very early because like you're saying.
And I'll say this about Bo. My feeling after that game was, okay, his ceiling is Dak. Like, I think his ultimate ceiling is Dak. He's not a freak athletically, but he's mobile. He's accurate, but his arm can't make all the throws. He can't make the Anthony Richardson throw. I mean, I don't know who can, but he can't even make the
Lawrence throw.
Yeah, the Lawrence throw. No, I don't think he can make the Lawrence throw. Agreed. So I think his ceiling is Dak. And again, it's like you invest that much and you're trying to make a guy, you hope his ceiling's Dak Prescott in a division where you now have what looks to be a physical juggernaut with a star quarterback in the Chargers and quite possibly the greatest football player we've ever seen with the greatest head coach we've ever seen in the Kansas City Chiefs. So good luck to the Denver Broncos.
You mentioned Dak Prescott, who, didn't light up the scoreboard with his stats per se, but the Dallas Cowboys did light up the scoreboard 33-17 over the Browns. Zeke coming back. It's a touchdown in his return. He looked all right. And Cleveland did not. Deshaun Watson looks really bad. He looks really bad, Mark. This is brutal.
We've seen Kevin Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice. He won it.
Yep.
Every time Kevin Stefanski has someone playing quarterback who's not Deshaun Watson, their offense is really fun and electric.
Good. Yeah.
I think
imagine if Joe Flacco, do they win this game? Probably, actually.
This new lawsuit that's come out against Deshaun is really fascinating. If you follow Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio is really into this story and I'm glad he's reporting it because it's scummy stuff to report on. It's not fun stuff to report on. It came out, I think, today that the new lawsuit, the client will speak with the NFL. The client
there's a video.
There's a video apparently. And this client was not part of the 25 ones that now the NFL can't use against Deshaun Watson because they were already settled. So it's crazy to say this, but the cap hit for Deshaun Watson, the dead cap hit for Deshaun Watson for the next 2 years is $172 million. Okay, that will go against the Cleveland Browns cap the next 2 years. The cap hit for Russell Wilson is $80 million. It's insane, right? Over 2 years.
Yeah. It's almost $100 million more.
If, and it's a huge if this, plays out in court or whatever, and Deshaun Watson gets indicted or something on this charge, if there's legitimate evidence, if charges come, right? Florio did report that the Browns did have a clause in his contract to where half the guarantee gets cut. Now his getting cut would be the Russell Wilson cut, which we've seen Denver do it. It sucks, but it's at least somewhat palatable. Like,
you rip the Band-Aid.
You can't cut a guy who's owed $172 million. You cannot. I think there's two things to talk about. First off, Dallas, I don't need to say anything on Dallas. They look like Dallas. They're going to be a good regular season team. Talk to me when we get to the playoffs, like if they make it. That's the question, right? For Cleveland, I truly think the locker room played free and energized with Joe Flacco last year. I think everyone knows he's a scumbag. I think everyone knows the truth behind this. He's a legit cancer in that team and that organization. And the scary thing is, I think Deshaun Watson has lost all of his confidence, all of his magic.
Yeah,
he doesn't even look like the same person. And it's probably because if he was truly an innocent man, you would go about like, this is your chance, your second chance at life, your chance to prove everyone wrong, right? But the guilty conscience, I think deep down, I know this has nothing to do with X's and O's, but it's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing to me explains it. There's the deep-seated guilty conscience. The dude can't play anymore.
Doesn't have it.
And I mean, Browns fans, remember how disgusting they were in supporting him when he got signed. I wasn't ever too critical on it. It wouldn't have been me. It was, but some people were saying
now they are relentlessly booing the man.
They're relentlessly booing the man. And again, that just, it's a no-win situation right now for Cleveland. And what they really need is a win. And he needs to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and just win a game and be like, guys, I deserve to be the starting quarterback. Because right now, the only reason he's the starting quarterback is because of the contract. Only reason.
Yep. It's crazy stuff. All right, let's get to the Buccaneers, 37-20 over the Commanders. Baker Mayfield looked really good, and the rookie Jaden Daniels looked pretty decent. I mean, ran all over the field in this one.
I called the Bucs. I picked the Bucs to win the division. This is what I expected. Yeah. Like, they just came out. The Bucs, it's so funny. Remember a year ago, I was one saying the Bucs should lose all the games. I think I had the Bucs winning 2 games last year. Remember the predictions? And I was like, because they should go for the number 1 pick and they should reset. By not resetting, what they've done is they have an incredibly crafty veteran team. I think they're thin. That's still the thing that concerns me, is they're thin, and they have some age at some spots where it's like, if a guy goes down, it's like, ugh. The running back looked dynamic. Baker looked energized and 100% healthy. And not only 100% healthy, but like Derek Carr, he felt confident in being there. Derek Carr and Baker were the 2 best quarterbacks on Sunday, and they looked confident and healthy. And when they're both confident and healthy, those 2 guys are right there in the discussion for why aren't we considered the 12th, 13th best quarterback in the league. I love that from the Bucs. I'll say this about Jaden Daniels. The dude, like Anthony Richardson, electric. He had 19 carries. Justin Fields has never had 19 carries. Steve Young never had 19 carries. Michael Vick never had 19 carries. Cam Newton, I think, did it 1 time. And I think the stat is Lamar Jackson has carried the ball 19 times, 7 times in his career. And Jaden Daniels in 1 game has carried the ball 19 times. Now, what does that mean? Let's think about this. And I want you to react to it too. I think there's like 3 things, right? Number 1 is it means he's not confident throwing yet. So he's just going to rely on his athleticism. And it's great that he's that athletic. Yeah, that's option 1. Option 2 is he is someone who is just an athlete, and you're going to have to sign up for this is who he is, and he's going to take hits. His helmet popped off multiple times. And then number 3 is you've got to get him into a position where he's only carrying the ball 11, 10 times or less. Like, you have got to now assert your coaching dominance and say, you can't do it. You can't do it. Or maybe the answer is don't design any runs, because he clearly was in the pocket and then just took off. Like, you cannot call a Jaden Daniels run because he's running way too much as it is. He's electric. I think, again, I feel the same way about him as I feel about Anthony Richardson. I think this is a kid that is going to earn a second contract with that team, and it'll be over by the end of that contract. And it'll be like, okay, that was really an exciting 7-year period of football in Washington, like it was exciting 7-year period in Indy. I don't know if it's going to amount to wins, but it's going to be crazy fun and exciting. And then you're going to have to move on and get someone else because the dude is right now through one game is built for like a 3-year career, not a 10-year career in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you definitely don't want to get that many carries week in and week out. And obviously it didn't amount to, a win. They were
still blown
up
out.
17 points, so yeah, at the end of the day, you got to figure out what the right balance is. But I'll push back slightly in that I think they drafted him with the intent that, we're going to use this guy like the Ravens used Lamar. And I don't know if Jaden has as talented of an arm as Lamar. I mean, that'll, be something that we'll find out. But
TBD.
I do think they got to find that balance there. But yeah, as for the Bucks, I mean, I'm in a lot of agreement. What I saw from the Falcons was not as encouraging. I had them winning the division. We'll see. It's obviously early. It's one game, but Tampa seems to be picking up right where they left off. The Rams-Lions, that game lived up to the billing.
Great
goes to overtime. Lions win 26-20. I think this is probably exactly kind of how we envisioned this one playing out in terms of the season-long aspirations for both these teams, what they would look like here. It's a bummer. Puka Nacua is going to be out for probably a month.
Huge
but
bummer.
Yeah. But overall, Detroit looked good. They played tough physical football, and in the end, that's what led them to an overtime victory.
The best win of the weekend because they were outplayed. The Rams were the better team for
the
most
Rams
of that game. More first downs, more yards. I mean, Matt Stafford was insanely good. And yet, what did the Lions do? They said, wait a minute. We're bigger and stronger. So let's just do that. And I will say this, Jameson Williams looked good. That was a question mark, right? So that's huge. Like, if you're a Lions fan, what a sigh of relief. You were a play away from a Super Bowl. And you now are literally, people are picking you to go to the Super Bowl. I picked you to go to the Super Bowl. And what did you do? You came out and you won a really important game against a really good team at home. Like, who is this? It never happened. We've never seen this in our lifetimes. In our lifetimes, we've never seen this with the Detroit Lions. So awesome win. For the Rams, I worry now because this is, again, you see the potential with this team in the NFC. But man, they're already beat up. Missing a tackle. Now you're missing Puka. Can Cooper Kupp turn back the clock to 2 years ago and be a stud for 3 weeks, 4 weeks to help them, be 500 by the time Puka gets back? That would be great, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yep. Time will tell on that front. But the Rams will be fine as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy. They'll be fine. They'll hang around. This was obviously a really tough opponent and a really, really good game. Let's get to the final one here. The 49ers manhandle the Jets in many ways. Even though it was a 13-point difference in the end, it even felt worse, to be honest. 32-19.
Tyrod Taylor threw a touchdown.
Yeah. No Christian McCaffrey in this one. It didn't matter. Jordan Mason. Oh, he was the one. I screwed it up earlier. Jordan Mason's the one. He had the most carries that he's ever had dating back to high school in this one. So Jordan Mason relied upon heavily and, goes to show the Shanahan system continues to churn. 28 carries for him in this 147 yards and a touchdown. Brock Purdy, just hyper efficient once again. No touchdowns, no picks, just steady Eddie throughout this one. We got our first, true glimpse of Aaron Rodgers in the New York Jets uniform. And I mean, it wasn't great. Threw a pick already. So he's 1-1, which is not as good as his 4.5 to 5 interception touchdown ratio in his career. But yeah, 13-21 for him, 167 yards. The offense seemed a little bit out of sync, and I do have questions, a lot of questions about this team, and the run game didn't seem to take off at all.
Listen, starting the year on the road against an incredible football team like San Francisco and losing,
that's tall order.
It's not. I'm not panicking on the Jets. I think what's concerning is Aaron Rodgers can't move. Like, I mean, he is now. He's now statuesque. I mean, there were times
Kirk Cousins looked very similar.
Oh, I mean, they can't move. And what's scary about that is Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, even late in their career, they never could move, right? Like they never
Yeah.
played quarterback being able to move. Aaron Rodgers now has to play quarterback not being able to move after playing his whole career being able to move. So, what is that going to look like? That's going to be, to me, a really interesting thing to keep an eye out for Aaron for the rest of the season. On top of that, so there's that. My next thing, the next point I want to make is offensively, nothing in the offense for the Jets looked explosive. It looked good. There were times it looked good. Garrett Wilson looked good, but nothing looked like, oh shit, how are teams going to really address that or stop that? So they got to figure that out. And then I would say for San Francisco really quickly, like I may be wrong. I predicted that they would make the playoffs but as a wild card, and this would be the year that you start to see the decline through one game. I'm very worried about that take. So kudos to them. I would sit Christian McCaffrey through September if that's what it took. Like, there's no
right.
need.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
There's
if they can go 4-0,
no need to rush him back. And that sucks for fantasy owners because we realistically, a week ago, none of us really thought Christian McCaffrey would miss a game, let alone now multiple games.
Yeah,
But
I mean, there was no indication he was even dealing with anything.
But that's what you get from NFL teams, right? They hide shit. And now it's like, oh, well, we won a game, so why not sit him the next game? And so I can't blame him for doing that, but it does suck for fantasy owners in that regard.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's get to real quickly kind of go through our three teams that we think it's important for them to get a win this upcoming week. I like to phrase it like that because need or must win, like those are.
I'm going need.
That's fine.
I don't want to say must win, but I'm going to go need for my three teams. I'm just going to give you the team names really quickly, Dan, and you can just respond as you will.
Okay.
The Falcons, to me, the Falcons are on the list. They're at number 3 on the list, so it's the third most need. They're not number 1 most need. They're at the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Again, I think it's just because what did we talk about a month ago with the Michael Penix pick? The pressure is on for this to look good because fans are fans, right? And if the quarterback's not playing well and you're losing, well, that's like, well, what are we doing? Put the kid in. Like, put the kid in. And that unravels things quickly, right? It unravels things quickly. And they're on Monday Night Football, which is Kirk Cousins' kryptonite. So I think there's going to be a lot of chatter if things don't go well for Atlanta on Monday night. Number 2 and number 1 are you can put them either way, but these are the two teams that need to win the most, and they're playing each other, the Jags and the Browns.
Yep. I had them on my list too. Yeah.
Good because it's
Absolutely.
to me, it's so obvious. Both of them need a win. I would argue Jacksonville needs a win more slightly in the sense that Cleveland fans, I think we all know what's going on. It's Deshaun. He can't play, but they can't really do anything. Jacksonville fans, this is not how they drew it up. Maybe you drew up losing to Miami, tough game, in-state rival. That's an explosive offense. But nowhere in the plan did it say, all right, we're comfortable being 0-2 through 2 games for Jacksonville. I didn't see that being in the plan at all. So for Jacksonville, I think it's a ton of pressure. For Cleveland, a win would help, push the mob back. Right? They're breaking down the gates. A win at least gets them back to like, okay, we're not breaking down the gates. We're just yelling outside the stadium.
Yeah. And I mean, they just need to develop some sort of light at the end of the tunnel because it seems so bleak for Jacksonville too. I think they need the win because then if they don't, they play the Bills, then the Texans. Like, if they don't win this week, like
I didn't even look ahead for them.
Yeah,
that's a
legitimate possibility if they lose. So a win at least, man, like gets them a little bit of a buffer here. For sure,
you can survive starting the season 1-3. You can't survive starting 0-4.
0-4. I don't think a team's ever gone 0-4.
And realistically, now you have to say 2-2. We've got to find a way to win this week, and we've got to find a way to beat the Texans, beat your division rival. Beat 2-2.
And those are both road games, by the way, at Buffalo, at at Houston.
And it's like, hey, if we can be 2-2 through 4, then we're in okay shape with a win over your division rival. So that's great added point to that, Dan.
Yeah.
Who would be
And
your other
Cleveland
third
has an
team?
easier schedule, but I still think that they do need to get the win, because the ball needs to start rolling 3 years ago. So they're already late to the party. Get it started sooner rather than later. So my team, and I like the Falcons pick. I do think they need to start getting some momentum there. My pick was the New England Patriots, a team that won last week. I think they need to win because I think it's important, actually, that Drake May not start for as long as possible this season.
That's a great point. Who are they playing this week?
I think they play the Seahawks this week. This could be a tough game.
At Seattle?
At home, though. At home.
Oh,
it's a home game against the Seahawks. And they have a tough stretch after that. They have to go to the Jets. They have to go to the 49ers. Then they play the Dolphins. Then they play the Texans. Like, it's going to get ugly pretty quickly for the New England Patriots. So I think getting a win here kind of like elongates that rope
window
for Jacoby Brissett. It gives them a little bit more confidence. Start 2-0. Like, you can afford then maybe a couple losses in there to still feel good about where you're at.
If you're then 3-6, you're still starting Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, that's kind of where my head went. I think Drake May he's young. He's really young, and I think he benefits the most of all of these young quarterbacks from sitting and absorbing. I would be good with him just sitting the entire rookie campaign, starting next year and going into it with a clean slate. We'll see how it pans out. But yeah, I think the longer the better for that wait for Drake May. Finally, we got Thursday Night Football. We'll do a quick preview, and then that will close us out for the week. Bills at the Dolphins. Miami favored in this one by 2.5 points, according to ESPN Bet. The over-under total here, 48.5 points. What are we thinking on this one? I mean, hey, man, history is history for a reason. I think the Dolphins need to win this game. I'm going to pick the Bills to win, though, and definitely to cover. I would take Bills money line all day on this one.
I already put money on Bills money line. I get the better quarterback, and I get the plus sign of the points. Here's the thing. I truly think that Miami in primetime at home is exciting, but I think the problem is they lose that advantage of being at night. You get to put the opposing team, and this is the Buffalo Bills. This isn't the Jacksonville Jaguars. You get to put the opposing team in the blazing hot sun at a noon kickoff in Miami, and they don't get the coverage. They don't get the shadow of the stadium. It's a huge advantage for any team that plays Miami. This is a night game. Sun is set. It's not going to matter as much. And I think that Josh Allen shows up in primetime. I picked Josh Allen to win the MVP. I think this is part of that MVP campaign. He's got a standalone game. There is no football game tomorrow. So all of the sports shows, from the Part of My Takes to Colin Cowherd to Dan Patrick and everyone else in between, this is all we get to talk about tomorrow. And I think that the conversation will be Josh Allen, another couple touchdowns, and a 2-0 start with no Stephon Diggs is the discussion. I think Miami plays well. I think it's a fun, exciting game. I think it's going to be points, but it's going to be Josh Allen and the Bills.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close too, but I agree. I think Josh Allen, already started off on a heater, and I think he's going to continue that run. And, Devon Achane is active for the game. We'll see how much he actually, just Adam Schefter announced while we were live here on the show. But we'll see how much they actually put him into the game plan. They're going to need him for sure against Buffalo in this one. Miami, again, really needs to win here. And Tua said it himself. If we want people to stop talking about it, we got to win one of these games here. And this is a great opportunity to do so. But yeah, we both take the Bills early on. We'll be back here next week to discuss all of the weekend's games. Looking forward to it. Should be good. See if we can, get some, turnarounds from some of these performances here. And we'll see if it's the Browns or the Jacksonville Jaguars that we're feeling a little bit better about.
And we'll see if we're still if we move to 2-0. We are a 2-0 podcast.
Yes. Hey, that'd be great, man. Let's keep it going. All right. We'll see you all here soon in just a few days. Enjoy your weekend of football and enjoy week 2 in the NFL.